so good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm happy to present Kati Sormunen, one of our SIG 15 coordinators. She holds a PhD and works at the University of Helsinki as a researcher and teacher educator. She has developed pedagogical approaches to computational thinking and coding skills in multidisciplinary cooperation with actors from school, university, and company in INOCA's network. In her research, she focuses on the learning of different learners in large-scale projects and develops a model of invention pedagogy in collaboration with researchers, teachers, and students. She is also an active author of digital learning materials for primary education, and she has co-authored several publications for science and mathematics education. Her professional interests century learning, especially with inclusive pedagogy and digitally supported learning, as well as methodological issues of learning, computational thinking, and maker skills. So thank you very much, Kati, and we are really looking forward to hearing you.
Thank you, Nadina, for presenting me, and good afternoon to all of you who are listening this afternoon. So my title of my presentation is I've learned that it's worth trying. So today I'm going to tell you about inventing with students who have learning difficulties in Finland. They are identified as children with or students with special educational needs. And more specifically, I'm going to tell you about one research that I'm working currently. But first, I like to define what I mean when I talk about inclusion and about inclusive practices when we are talking about these inventing activities, what we have been researching. From my perspective, the inclusion emphasizes educational equity and promotes lifelong learning opportunities for all students regarding family income, gender, ethnic background, abilities, and disabilities. So when I talk about the inclusive settings, I take a look at kind of a wide perspective, focusing on different kinds of difficulties at school. Because in the Finnish context, our framework provides support for all students at 3 levels. We have the general support, enhanced support, and special support. And the level of support is dependent, for example, on the difficulties faced by students in their learning. So in the research where I'm focusing, the settings are often so that there are different support levels in classes. But in addition to these kind of a global perspectives, I feel that today we should also notice rapidly changing societies and digital inclusion. And digital inclusion aims to foster students' equal access to digital technology and the possibility to learn digital skills at school. It also aims to diminish inequalities with respect to digital tools due to socioeconomic status. And this is a kind of how it connects to inventing and invention settings. As said, one of the general aims globally, but in Finland also, the education aims to eliminate the exclusion that might reduce students' social relationships. And I'm focusing in science and technology education, where it means an increased risk of reducing options for following students' own science-related educational aspirations and also citizenship skills. There is a firm research evidence that strong peer-to-peer relationships reduce exclusion and promote inclusion. And at school, strong peer relationships foster friendship, social inclusion, and academic outcomes. Previous research indicates also that learning methods in which knowledge is built collaboratively in iterative cycles and through working with real-life challenges benefit students' scientific knowledge and competence building. Especially creative maker approaches are convenient, inclusive classes because they are adaptable to different kinds of learners and provide a structure in which the teacher can differentiate the learning process or the act of creation. Also, maker-centered project-based learning that connects kind of a maker mindset and STEAM activities connects or provides structuration to students' learning tasks and practice enables them to practice collaborative competence in more depth. To promote this kind of a use of creative technologies, our research group, together with teachers in the field, has developed invention pedagogy at various educational levels, from early childhood education to final years of compulsory education. So in Finland in the ninth grade. Invention pedagogy combines evidence-based teaching and learning strategies for knowledge creation, collaborative designing and crafts education, creative problem solving, especially in science context, and technology education, but also learning of future competencies or 21st century skills and support for learning. During the invention process, the students learn to deal with the challenging scientific, technological, and design problems through the invention process and collaboratively develop creative solutions using various digital and traditional technologies. By traditional technologies, I talk about hammer and saw and that sort of technologies. We consider that every student is an inventor, a maker who is encouraged to share his or her knowledge when constructing a shared artifact. If we connect the invention pedagogy to compulsory learning, the students engage not only in science and technology education, but also to transdisciplinary knowledge building and learning of process-oriented skills. Again, if we look at the Finnish context, the technology education, and especially if we talk about the information and communication technologies, is integrated in the various school subjects. And we don't have a dedicated ICT lessons, and it's up to the teacher to use or not to use ICT during lessons in various domains. And this is a kind of a concerning fact if we talk about the digital inclusion and those digital skills that the students will need later in their life. But there is also in the slide a different perspective of the disciplinary knowledge and also the transdisciplinary objectives. What we consider that is learned through inventing. Well, over the years, teachers and us researchers, we have together organized dozens of these kind of STEAM-oriented, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics-oriented invention projects in schools. but we know fairly little about how students with the special educational needs or learning disabilities or difficulties participate into these kind of activities. So the study that I'm going to present to you today in more detail investigates SEN students' participation in 3 different class settings. So we are focusing on these 3 classes. The students in these three cases had all similar kind of special educational needs or learning difficulties, which we use both terms kind of equally. But their school placements varied. It was due to various reasons. The class in the inclusive or the inclusion class called class 1, the SEN students were fully integrated and they worked in mixed ability groups during the project which we followed. The class 2, the special class, there was a special educational class in the regular school or mainstream school, and they began their project with the mainstream class, but the teachers decided to run 2 separate projects due to scheduling difficulties. So they were 7th graders, and in Finland there is the subject teachers who are teaching students. So it was a kind of a challenging for teachers to schedule the project so that they were able to work side by side throughout the project. In the inclusion class, they were primary age, so the final years of the primary level, and there the teachers taught every single subject together, so it was more flexible for them. And in the class 3, there was a special class in a special school, and these were students whose schooling was supported by child welfare, and they all needed more intensified support for schooling. So we were interested to see what are the differences of the students' experiences on those projects or the teachers' orchestration in those projects. The data collection varied depending on the class setting and students' privacy issues and also research permissions, but the data that we used were analyzed through qualitative content analysis. So if we look closer at these projects, all projects aimed to design an intellectually challenging, aesthetically appealing, and personally meaningful complex artifact that integrated both physical and digital elements. Only the project name and their objectives varied within projects. So in inclusion class, the title of the project was Everyday Challenges. In special class in regular school, it was a smart product. And in the special class in special school, it was my invention. And all projects had interdisciplinary curricular goals that integrated science, technology, engineering, and mathematics objectives. Also craft and visual art objectives, and also these transversal competencies which are part of the Finnish curriculum also. And then science, design, and engineering practices where students observe, experiment, invent, and be creative were included in all of these curriculum content areas. So these were also in all of these projects. But as you can see, the main focus of all project was on the transversal competencies and craft and visual arts objectives, with a few STEM objectives based on the which objectives the teachers set for the projects. So more specifically, the study that I'm presenting you aimed to investigate SEN students or LD students' participation in 3 different class settings and answer to these research questions. What were the characteristics of these processes in these 3 different class settings? What differences can be found and similarities? And what similarities can we found about the teachers' actions and especially in the perspective of supporting students' a creative process, and then what kind of science learning opportunities can be identified from the data. So here's what we found, and the first research question. The structure of the invention processes varied in different class settings. So the color codes are the same as you saw the picture of the invention process earlier. The co-invention process began all of the groups with the warm-up phase, where students engage in working in groups or with the project. But the processes differed from the co-invention model. So as in other invention projects in the mainstream schools or mainstream classes, this sort of a creative processes doesn't usually follow a linear process, but it kind of lives through the process depending on how the students are developing their inventions. But it kind of guides the process for the children, and especially for the kids who have a special educational needs. It kind of enables them to focus on which states of the process they are going on, and gives that kind of a structure. The science and technology content was also integrated differently to this project, was mainly in the warm-up sessions. So they were focused there, depending again what the teachers thought that was best for the students. The used methods in class and the progress of the process varied according to students' learning needs regarding science, curriculum, content, knowledge, and the personal learning processes. But during the process, students use their subject-specific knowledge in different ways through knowledge creation, designing, creative problem solving, and they used technology and engineering in collaboration with others. All except in one class, in class 3, 3 students were not able to collaborate, so they made their individual inventions. Especially teachers' roles varied in presented cases, marked with these red squares here. In all classes, the project was planned thoroughly in advance. However, in class 3, teachers orchestrated the lessons more carefully than in the other classes, focusing on predicting the next session. And if we compare the classes, in class this support was needed only in the first sessions. Subsequently, only few groups needed more support until the 7th session. So to get you a better idea what the support was in the classes 2 and 3, and especially here in the class 3, where we identified most of the intensive teacher orchestration, we should take a look teachers' action in this 11th session. It was one of the last sessions in all classes, and at that time the students were acquainted with the project, meaning that they knew what to do during the lesson. I have a small narrative of the start of each class in this session. In inclusive class, the narrative was from one of the groups that needed more or the most of the support. Their teachers began the lesson by guiding students to continue with their inventions in small groups. They also told them what classrooms were available for work, and students took their materials and tools and left for group spaces. And in those group spaces, students discussed a division of labor, and this action was not considered as an intensive teacher orchestration. It was kind of a regular setting of the lesson task. But in classes 2 and 3, teacher support was needed throughout the project. In class 2, students had teacher-led activity before they continued their inventions with the differentiated instructions. And in class 3, all students needed more robust support. The SEN students benefited from parallel making with an adult often, meaning that similar to, for example, parallel play in the kindergarten age children, the students became interested in what the teacher was doing and used this to structure their work. In this example, the parallel making was with me. I was available for students online if they needed me. So this was during the COVID period in the 2020 spring. So I was a kind of a support model there. So what science learning opportunities we identified in these projects and students' artifacts? The learning objectives in the right were identified from the video recordings or researchers' observation notes. And let's see, I think I have a wrong slide here. I perhaps skip it. Let's see. Let's see, I think I have lost the here. I said this is the learning opportunities from the inclusion class, so class 1. The teachers aim that students learn these necessary basic science and engineering skills in the first 4 warm-up sessions at the beginning of the project, and during the project the group members supported each other in those areas. However, all groups did not use the devices as it was set to the objectives. But for example, the gel comb invention in here, they use different kinds of technology. So their invention is here. It's the gel comb, which is aimed to boys that are in hurry and mornings, and they want to speed up brushing their hair because they are in hurry to go to school. The gel comb looks like a regular comb, but it has a container. Here you can see the several prototypes of the container where to store gel and then press through a comb spikes into the hair. And this team made 5 prototypes this was made from wood, from recycled materials, these 3, and 3D printing was used in this, and then they tried very hard to get the gel out of the gum. But unfortunately, the challenge was too challenging for them, so they didn't get the invention work properly. We identified all of these teachers at curricular goals except programming in this data. And after each project, we asked students we interviewed the students about what they learned during the process. And in the inclusion class, the students emphasized learning of transversal competencies, especially thinking and learning to learn, process skills and participation. So the social inclusion was strongly emphasized in their interviews. And in class 2, the project started with design and inventing activities, and the technology content was provided right after ideating sessions. The invention in the picture is a Flappy Bird type of game, which was implemented on the Microbit platform. And to make gaming more user-friendly, students used the Tinkercad modeling software to design a game crib that was 3D printed in here. So here is their engineering design, and then there is the actual prototype, 3D prototype. The students were aimed to learn programming with the Microbit and 3D designing in the middle of the project when teachers saw it beneficial for some inventions, and they applied their knowledge in inventing. In this class, students described mainly learning of subject-specific knowledge related to digital skills in the interviews, and this was really interesting because in the inclusion class the emphasis was more in transversal competencies, and in here it was more subject-specific knowledge. And then in class 3, the first 5 sessions began with the different teacher-led warm-up activities to engage students in work. Students investigated technological sculptures or design sculptures and explored creative problem solving and ideating exercises, because teachers felt that their students needed to broaden their perspectives and required encouragement to use their imagination. And in contrast to other classes, science learning class 3 was integrated into the modification and implementation of sessions, and the teachers intensively supported their learning. And as said, most of the inventions were individual inventions. Only one was co-invention. The invention here is one student's invention. He invented a score counter to Jim's basketball stand and made a small-scale model of it using an open-source Arduino project for score counter. As the teacher predicted, the designing part of inventing was not so engaging than the technological one, as you can see from the pictures. So students worked 4 sessions intensively with the Arduino and used only 1 session for prototyping the basketball stand. And in class 3, the students' interview answers were related to digital skills and self-efficacy and responsibility. And interestingly, also they as the teachers thought the kind of a visual design elements were lacking from the students' answers. So all projects had similar learning objectives when the teachers designed these projects. However, different students in different class settings experience different kinds of learning benefits. And after each project, the students were asked what they learned during the process, and students' answers were quite similar in the same class, but we found differences in different classes, as said previously. In the inclusion class, it was transversal competencies, special class, these as said, and in class 3, the transversal competencies and STEM objectives. So to conclude, in creative technology projects such as co-invention, in classes where there are students that have a special educational needs, the teacher's most important task is to connect the learning task to learning objectives and support SEN students' learning processes. If we look at those, how the science learning was supported in those classes where the science were kind of in throughout the invention process available, or the teaching was available for the students. The science objectives were in their discussions also. We also noticed that this can be accomplished by teacher orchestration, meaning that the project sessions have a clear structure. The teacher ensures that the work begins within the groups, and the teacher gives intensified support for those groups whose members have difficulties working or engaging. It seems that science contents, as I said, should be taught during the project with small STEM activities connected to students' inventions. This way, teacher can make sure that students learn desired content areas and apply the learned knowledge and skills in the real life situation. In groups with both SEN and mainstream students, the group members support each other's participation, but students with severe social difficulties seem to benefit from more robust teacher modeling of participation. Even though the study was done mainly in the classes where there was a special educator supporting the process, we have noticed that these results of the study are transferable to all maker-centered learning environments, where there is difficulties for students to engage in cooperative work. Teachers should inspire students to collaborate with their peers, engage in learning tasks using variety of methods. And most importantly, teachers should be intensively involved in students' learning processes, while also anticipating potential challenges. Unfortunately, I don't have an ad here, but during next fall, we are publishing an invention pedagogy book, where there are also a chapter where I, with my colleague Marjo Tuvila, we talk about the orchestrating these sort of activities in classes with a lot of diversity. And even though I don't have here any picture of you, what kind of inventions are made in the mainstream classes or with the students that are high achieving, these are quite similar what you saw here today with these kids. But what I feel that is the main focus of or the main kind of thing that arises from this project with the kids that don't have similar academic abilities than their peers, they still get or they get more kind of empowering feelings when they enter this type of project where they are needed more practical skills. And for example, this Olavi, who had difficulties with language related skills, reading and writing, he thought that he learned that you should always try, and if I could participate in inventing this sort of invention, I might become famous and wealthy someday if I'm lucky. So that's the kind of a most brilliant citing what I got, and it has also a point because their peers got the patent for their invention, how to get your school desk clean. So there is a kind of a seed of that in Olavi's say. So thank you all. As usually, I get engaged in presenting about inventing if someone is listening me with it. So it took a bit over half an hour of my presentation, but perhaps you have some questions.
Well, I have One question. You were saying that, for example, this child who you put the site that had language problems. Do you think teachers or schools should dedicate more hours to this kind of activities like programming, or that, especially to these children who struggle with most of the tasks that are involved in class, because most of the subjects involve language, reading? So maybe, do you think that it would be nice to include an additional subject, especially for them in the curriculum, so that they can have more time to do something they can, how to say, that they can succeed in? What's your opinion?
I don't believe that we need a extra subject. I believe that these should be integrated in different subjects. If we are thinking about the early years of primary school, or in the preschool, or a bit younger students than that, saying from 4 or 5 years on, when they are beginning to learn, for example, reading skills, there are such a robotics tools where they can kind of practice those skills with the interesting tool, where they focus both on practicing language skills and also programming. So that's what I noticed working with the kids with some kind of learning difficulties, and actually that what guided me to make a researcher's career afterwards, because I noticed that when they were using unconventional tools such as programming or robotic tools, they practiced also skills that they were more eager to try and make errors and try again, which also was transferred to more traditional paper pen practices. But that's very hard to kind of research, and I don't know if Pirjo has an idea how we could track that. But that's the kind of experience that comes from many teachers who are using these kind of novel tools in their learning. They could be also tools for kind of prizes, that if they have done their work, they can operate with these. Teachers are using that sort of ways there also. But it's so difficult to measure learning and how, for example, the transversal competencies are developed during those activities.
That was actually my question. I, for some reason, cannot get the camera on, but I think that's what would be my question. That why didn't you measure the performance level and an increase in performance level? I was just thinking that we have been trying to invent problem-solving tasks, so to kind of test how mathematical problem solving is proceeding. Those kind of, because we are doing them with very young children, but we are using concrete objects there, and those kind of tasks might be good for you also to try out. That it would be something that children can use manipulatives to show how they kind of solve the problems. And so but I think I really would like to see you measuring performance.
Yeah. Because we have been trying to develop measurements for problem solving skills and also design skills, and if there are kind of attitude changing also, but there isn't any kind of a measurement tool or any that is kind of ready and also fitted to our context. So we haven't found it yet. And what we have been trying to develop, because of COVID, I measured from these students that we had a pre and post test of physics, and the paper we are submitting it now. So the physics, science and physics test, but in the two of the last, or the class 2 and class 3, we also had that kind of attitude test and the problem solving test, but we don't have enough data so we can use the measurements yet. But these are still developing, and I think that we are not the only ones who are puzzling with it. Yeah. But it would be also interesting to kind of compare if there are truly, for example, mathematical skills that are improving, or that sort of things during the projects. We haven't done that.
I think it would be really nice to kind of collaborate in this sense, that we could kind of see what you have been trying to develop as a measurement, and we could kind of share what we have been developing. Maybe we could together find, because it would be highly important to kind of make visible what you think that there is happening, the learning. And so I think it would be the way to kind of develop measurements suitable for that. Would be very, very important, in a sense that it would be good for the kids also to realize that they learn, and be able to kind of show them that this is the way you have been proceeding during these weeks. So I really would, that would be really, really nice to have that kind of data.
I agree.
So we should keep on thinking how we solve the problem here.
That's true.
Any more questions here? Okay.
Thank you, Vaisen, for your comment.
Okay, so I think there are no more questions. So thank you very much, Kati, for presenting, and thank you all the attendants who listened to the seminar, and have a nice day.
You too. Thank you, Kati.
Thank you, Pirja and Nadina.